Hello, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to another BGH Connect. I'm hoping everything's going smooth. That was a little wacky. I have no clue what just happened, but we're running smooth. And guess who I have on today? We have a very special guest by the name of Joe Paull. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Joe, I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about Prestige, a city building board game that you designed, and we're going to get through the weeds. We're going to go over a little bit of the overview of the game and your process behind the scenes, how you interacted with the community. As you know, we are all about community here at the Board Game Hype. And then we're going to go into the campaign later on. So if anyone has any questions about the game or anything you want to ask Paul or Joe, Paul. Ask Paul first and then ask Joe. Go ahead and write a comment. Oh my gosh. Write a comment and then we'll get going from there. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are as a person, an individual. And before you get into game design, just tell us about your life. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. My name's Joe. I'm just an average guy. In my day job, I work in traffic engineering and urban planning, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit because it definitely has influenced my design of Prestige in particular. But yeah,
I see what you
I
did there.
just.
I see what you did there. That was clever.
um, but yeah, I, I'm super into board games, as we all probably are if we're in this live stream. But mostly enjoy playing with my wife, and otherwise, we're really big people on just developing community and hosting people and throwing cocktail parties, which we actually have one coming up on Saturday, which is going to be fun. And just living life with other people.
Michael also says, I'm an average guy. Cheers to us. Thanks for being here, Michael. We appreciate that. Yeah, that's really cool to hear, like how your career really has helped also in your game design.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about city building, right? And
Mhm.
that's literally part of your career. So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool how you can put two and two together. So let's dive into that then. So now that
Sure.
we've talked about you just a little bit, how did you get into game design? Did it start because at a day job and you had something you just sparked an idea, get inspiration? Tell us more.
No, it's kind of a weird story in that I wasn't actually into board games until I moved here to San Francisco, and I had a roommate who had like 200 to 300 board games on his shelf in the dining room. And that just kind of blew me away because, like many people, before I got into the hobby, I just known about things like Catan at most, but most of my experience was Monopoly, Treble, the Game of Life, things like that.
The
And then I
best
just
game.
saw, and then I just saw this like wall of board games. I was like, "What is this?" And for the next year, I just played a different game with him and his family and just all of his neighbors, like 2 to 3 times a week, which is really awesome, and introduced me to it all. And then I was getting ready to propose to my wife, and I had decided that I had this really elaborate plan to build this box that showcased like what our life could be like as we progressed through life together. And then at the bottom of this box was the ring, and I like got on my
Oh my
knee and
gosh.
asked her to marry me. Um,
Dead.
and somebody had actually recently compared it to that box at the opening of Knives Out 2. I don't know if people have
Oh,
seen that.
okay. That's a good movie.
It wasn't nearly as complicated to open, but
Yeah.
it had required a lot of woodworking skills for me to make. And I decided to practice on that by making a board game for my roommate who had all these games. And at first I was like, oh, it's just going to like, I'll throw a few rules together and I'll make it out of this wood and make it really beautiful. And then I just started experimenting with uh, mechanics. I was like, oh, this is really fun to like experiment and build things. So that was a game called Dust in Space. The original version that's really nice and ornate and wooden is total crap. But it's still a game I'm
Total
developing and
crap.
is a lot nicer space than it was back then. But it's a lot of fun, and I just kind of kept with it as a hobby. And then, yeah, Prestige was the next game I kind of developed. And it just kind of developed on its own through other means. Definitely a reflection of my day job with traffic engineering and city planning and all that stuff. But also a reflection of my love of another game called Horizon Zero Dawn in like video game space. And
They have
yeah,
a board game now too, right?
they do. I've never played it, but it looks super cool.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Chris in particular from Diary of a Lincoln Geek talks it up a lot, and
Mr.
just
Chris.
he recently they did a 24-hour live stream where he painted all the miniatures and it looked awesome.
Wow.
And it was for charity, so definitely check it out if anyone out there hasn't listened to that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I got to get Chris on one of these videos too, because we have a lot to talk about. Bruno's here. Chuck's here. Thanks for joining. Chuck says he can't listen, but we're both amazing. And I'm sure you'll find an amazing publisher to pick Prestige up. Oh yeah, I have no doubts at all that it's going to happen. But Michael says, I think the board game shipped with only one machine to fight, but overall the mechanics are cool and the theme is there. I'm assuming Horizon Zero Dawn is what he was talking about.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and every time I've seen that, it's like huge boxes. You know, there's like 15 boxes of things. And I'm just like, how many boxes do we need? And I'm over here like, designing small box games. Yeah. But
yeah. Cool. I will say my game has nothing to do with Horizon Zero Dawn. It was actually just inspired out of listening to the designers of that game talk about how they made the city of Meridian, which sits right in the center of the open world of the video game. And just the way that they approached it, thinking about how ancient cities work. And I just thought that was really intriguing. And so I just started thinking about that. And the first version of Prestige was actually a spreadsheet, which sounds really boring, but was a lot of fun to put together. As I just thought about, like, in an ancient world, where different buildings would want to be in association with each other. Because you can't just drive from the warehouse to the market. You have to actually pick up the boxes and deliver them. So adjacency is key.
Interesting. Yeah. So like, where did your journey begin? I know you talked about the box, and that is super adorable. You know, that is such a fun way to do that. Where did your journey begin into designing this game? Like, can you describe like the beginning of the process, and then how you went through the prototype phase and towards, almost publication and stuff like that?
Yeah. Like I said, I was super obsessed with the game Horizon Zero Dawn, and while I was playing, I was listening to this interview with the designers, and then like a week after listening and thinking about that process that they took, I had that spreadsheet up, and then I was like, this can totally be a board game. And it originally started as a tile laying game, but I decided that I wanted it to be something that was easy to take with you and just like whip out a deck of cards, shuffle it, and play it. And very quickly the game developed, and the initial design of it is pretty much the core mechanics that withstood, which is pretty amazing because most of my games, I'm a very theme-heavy designer, so I tend to switch out the core mechanics really quickly just to suit the theme better. And oftentimes what I start with is very far off from what I end with. But Prestige, it really lent itself to the core mechanics that we built into it. For those who aren't familiar, it's a tableau game where you're building an ancient city together. So you're placing these cards that represent a bunch of different ancient buildings in a city in the dawn of civilization. And it's also semi-co-op. So you're working to make sure the city isn't a failure. So you don't want it to be abandoned. Yeah, I don't actually know who that guy is.
I know that guy.
Do you?
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he's in the Hyper group. He taught me he taught me Land versus Sea, I believe.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that was from Gen Con. Super cool time.
Cool.
This picture, he's not in the picture, but also the designer of Harrow County was playing with me at the airport right after Gen Con.
Jay Cormier?
Yeah, not Jay. I'm terrible with names, and I apologize to him out front, but I don't think he's in the Hyper group, so I think we're okay. But great guy, whatever his name is. And I forget where it was. Oh, yeah, just semi-co-op. So you're working to make sure the city isn't a failure, as in it's not abandoned, forgotten, or destroyed. But at the same time, you're trying to ensure that you are the one remembered as building this great city because you're at a rivalry with all these other tribes that are trying to influence the city. And that's just kind of what stuck.
Okay.
Stuck, yeah.
Awesome. Michael has a question here for you.
Sure.
Michael says, what has been the biggest design challenge you have faced while creating Prestige? What roadblocks have you encountered and how did you get past them?
That's a great question. I think the biggest challenge I had was I was way too ambitious at the beginning. I had started out the game with 10 different tribes that were interchangeable. They're all asymmetric factions, and each tribe comes with its own deck with different cards that they represent. So thematically, it's like warrior tribe, fishing tribe, priestly tribe, all these different representations in the city. And I had 10 of them and 40 cards per deck, and it was just way too many
That's
cards.
a lot.
So I think the biggest challenge for me was identifying like, okay, what is marketable, which ended up being around six tribes was the ideal foundation for the game, and what can I shift out to be a future expansion or just like its own thing in the future. So I think cutting out pieces of the game was probably the hardest decision. I don't have any regrets. I think the tribes that we have at the core are the real heavy hitters of the game, and then everything I shifted out to expansions, if we ever get down to that part of the road, will be a core, like really interesting addition to the game.
5 tribes.
Yeah. I actually did have 5 at one point in time, and people told me I should update to 6.
Yeah.
But I was super worried that with the 5 tribes that people would
be a little bit too on the nose, huh? Yeah.
5 tribes, the game, yeah.
No, I think 6 is good. I mean, a lot of the games that I've enjoyed have been like 6 players, or like not 6 players, but like 6 characters. Because if you have a 4-player game, and you're like, okay, now we can interchange, replay a little bit with the next one. So I like 6 usually for my games and stuff too.
Yeah, and a major thing behind that was originally, and you can still play it this way, but originally I had everyone choose their own faction and go around in a circle. And people just didn't like the fact that the last person, when it was only 5, because it's a 4-player game, when it was the last person, they were limited to 2 choices. So updating that to 6 just gave players a little bit more variety when you're the last person to choose. Now it's randomly dished out, and they're at least officially in the rules, but people can make their own house rules if they want.
Right. Cool. Well, let's circle back a little bit. We'll go more on the campaign, like the game and everything later on. But let's talk about the community, because the community is the heart of what we do here. And so the first thing I want to know is like, what has been like your main source of inspiration from the community for this game? Like, how have they helped you develop the product? Like, how have you integrated them? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is a huge shout out to Fall Cancel, who was an early playtester, amazing artist, developer of a game that was called Biomorph, and I keep forgetting the name of the new name.
Oh no.
I'll find it by the end of the live stream. But it's a beautiful game, and everybody has to find it. But he played the game, and he didn't like the semi-co-op factor of it. But he still loved the game, and he wanted to play it over and over again. So because of his interest in playing it as purely cooperative, which I felt very bad because I kept beating him because it is semi-co-op, but he considered just somebody winning being a victory in and of itself. So I developed a fully cooperative variant to the game, which wasn't just like, okay, we're going to play, but we're going to eliminate the semi-co-op rules. But we now have like a full set of new rules that goes with the fully cooperative game that is still based on the core mechanics of adjacency and tribal dominance, but approaches it in a much more cooperative fashion where you're looking more at the equity of everybody. Because the first introduction in the rules to the game is that you're trying to create a city where all of the people can flourish. So in the fully cooperative game, you're actually trying to accomplish that, whereas in the semi-co-op, base game, you're trying to make sure that your people are actually the ones flourishing.
Hmm.
So it just allows for people to have a few different varieties of how they tackle the game, and just gives more playability if you want to play with people who don't want to play against each other, and play as a fully cooperative game.
Yeah, I know that that's a nice like transition question, because that's
Yeah,
down the line that I had
Mhm.
is semi-cooperative is very much a stigma. It's
Yeah.
like there's either people that absolutely hate it or people that
Mhm.
really love it, and there's not a lot that are like in between. And so like what is your personal opinion on the semi-co-op term, and how like can you describe the elements of the semi-co-op in the game?
Yeah, definitely. So I think to start with this conversation, um, and defining semi-co-op is important. And we can all have our own definitions. It's a hobby. It's not like Merriam-Webster says this. But
This is it.
I really like the way that Board Game Geek defines the mechanic, in that um, one or more people can win the game, or everyone can lose. But it can't be the situation where everyone can win, and it can't be the situation where you're trading favors. And that's not the official like word for word definition. Um, but that's the essential idea, is that, yeah, there we go. A game in which players are cooperating and competing each other throughout the game, while trying to, yeah,
Sorry.
uh, you're fine.
I'm trying to
While
complete
trying to
one
compete
objective.
a common objective. And those two, A, B, are the two outcomes that I talked to about. One or more, but unlikely to be all players win, and no players win. So there's two kind of branches to this genre. There is the hidden trader games, which I think most people think of when they think of the semi-co-op genre. Games like Nemesis, beautifully designed game.
Does Dead of Winter have that too?
Dead of Winter is one of
Yeah.
them. Yeah. Fellow Hyber Josh or John DeCampos developed Black Mold,
Yeah.
and that's a semi-co-op game. The other side of semi-co-op is that you're all working towards a common objective, but only one person can win, which is the way that Prestige is played. So in Prestige, you're trying to make sure that the city isn't destroyed, because then nobody can win. But you're also trying to make sure that you have the most influence over the city, as you're the representative of your tribe. So you're playing cards from all sorts of tribes into the city, and the real basic mechanic of it is each card represents one piece of influence, because your architecture, your values are represented in those cards. And you play from other tribes, but you really want to make sure no tribe is coming before your own. So you have to make a lot of interesting decisions of like, do I preserve the city by playing this card from another tribe, or do I push that responsibility along to the next player and just value my own tribe? Um, and it's a very hard genre to design, because as a lot of people probably thought of when I described that, the easiest thing to do if you know you're not winning is to just tank the city and ruin it for everybody.
Yep.
Um,
Be that
so
person.
yeah, and that's not that can be fun, but it's not fun in every game.
Right.
So the way that I've designed it, the game only lasts 30 to 45 minutes, which I think is really important. You don't want to sit in for 3 hours and design, like really put your all into saving the city and have it just fail on you, or have it like have it a success, but
Yeah.
you find out that you're not the winner. Like that's not a great feeling.
Doesn't feel good.
So having a game that you can like set up and play in 30 to 45 minutes, and then I didn't win, but we succeeded, and then we can set up again, and maybe I can be the winner this time, was really important for like a game night. So that was really important to it. And also I developed the game in a way that it kind of acts into three different, it's kind of like a movie. It has three acts to it. The early game is super cooperative, because you don't know who's winning, you don't know who each other are, and there's a lot of variability to it, so you don't know what's going to come out. You're just working to make sure your city survives, which thematically makes a lot of sense, because in the ancient world, a lot of cities just kind of perished and went unremarkable ventures that the history books have forgotten about. and you're
Yeah.
trying to not do that. In the second act, you're trying to suss out who everybody is, and then on the third act, you're trying to make sure that you win. The first act is really easy to tank the city, which is fine because the first 10 minutes of the game, you can reset the game, and nobody wants to tank the city yet because nobody knows who's going to win.
Right.
Second act is a lot more about like trying to hide who you are, and then the third act is a lot more about trying to make sure that you win. And I've designed the game in a way that if you can't, it's very hard to tank the city at that stage. So I think I've done a good job. People who've play tested can tell me otherwise, but it's been a challenge, and it's been something that I've been aware of and something that I've been trying to design around so that the semi-co-op genre can feel a lot more approachable to everybody.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, if you don't want to play semi-co-op, you got the fully co-op version, and it's its own beast, and it is as much of a challenge as the semi-co-op is.
Yeah, I'm glad you at least have the normal co-op, because me personally, I'm not a semi-co-op fan at all. Like, I really do not like that. But so I appreciate like that there's an actual cooperative version. It's like, the kind of things where I play Marvel Legendary quite a lot. And that is like the dumbest semi-co-op I've ever seen. It's like, okay, we are the actual winners now. I'm so whatever. Victory.
Right. Yeah.
It's not about that, but no, I appreciate that, the explanation, that being on BGG, I haven't seen the BGG explanation. So that was kind of nice to have as information. So going back to the community, you had mentioned Falk. Is there anyone else, like, let's give them a shout out, like who has helped you along the way? If there's anyone that's play tested a lot, that's really helped you define the game, go ahead and give them a shout out now.
Yeah. Jack and Evan from Playtest This, they hosted me for one of their sessions, which was a huge help. I highly recommend any designer get on that live show because it's just amazing the insights that they can provide and the deep dive that they do. It's a couple hours versus just like, oh, I've played, and then here's 10 minutes of reflection, which you get with most playtests, which is very understandable because you've already taken up a lot of their time. But Jack and Evan and all of their co-hosts are a huge help in the way that they dive into every little mechanic that you have going on and really offer you some really great advice from people who have been gone through the gauntlet of getting published and have some great games out there.
So that helps.
What's that?
That they're also geniuses.
Yeah, they are. Also, shout out to Trevor, who is a regular guest on that show and was for my playtest. And he's also been a huge help. He's been one of my reviewers through the Board Game Design Lab Rules Exchange, which has been an amazing resource. He's also been a partner for me for the Tabletop Design Partnership, which is also an amazing system. And he's just been a frequent playtester and a good friend. So huge shout out to him. Matt Rodella is also a frequent playtester who's offered me a lot of great insights and has also been a huge encouragement as he's really loved the game. And then also we have a lot of people who have like sunk themselves into the game, and it's been amazing because this game is not just something that's popped out of my head, but we've invited people to be in particular, I'm thinking of our guest writers. So the game has event cards, and we've invited content creators from around the board game universe to be some guest writers for these event cards to add little stories to each one.
That's really cool.
Yeah, the folks at Diary of Lincoln Geek, we have a few of them on as guest writers. We also have Chris Doka, who runs Magic and Meeples on Instagram, and PJ, who's both the co-host of Meeples to Meeples as well as the Cajun Board Gamer on Instagram. And they all have some really interesting things to add to the game that has just brought some new life that otherwise wouldn't exist.
That's like one of my favorite things is when like publishers and designers bring the community into the game. Like, not necessarily like, hey, pay us $1 million to put your face on a card or whatever. Cause like, that's cool. Like that works. But like organically, bringing people in organically without like matching their likeness and stuff. Like, it's a little different to get your face in the game and then like having a writer, like guest writers and stuff. Like, I think that's super cool. And what a great way to get the community involved.
Yeah.
As we all know, without the community, the game's not going to be published. So it's like we need the people to be backing us and supporting us. Um, so that's one way you've done to develop like community relationships and stuff. But what else have you done? I know you have a Facebook group,
Mhm.
but like, how have you engaged your community around the game? Like consistently, how do you get people to talk about maybe not necessarily your game, but is there like something you do to shine the light on other people, or how do you provide value to the people that are supporting your project?
Yeah. So we got the Facebook group. I also have an Instagram that I use pretty actively, and a Discord for the game. And using all of those different platforms, which is a beast in and of itself to try and coordinate. But I try to make sure that we're not just generating content for our game, but also highlighting everybody who's involved in those groups. So um, oftentimes when somebody in the group will be also launching their own Kickstarter, because I think one of the biggest uh, groups of people who support early games are fellow designers. So, um, for instance, when Jack had launched New Kingdoms Gardener, we like did a whole spotlight for him in the Prestige group and
Do you give like a
whatnot.
newsletter and stuff too? Then
What's that?
do you do it in like a newsletter as well?
Um, yeah, so the original publisher for the game had a newsletter that went out,
Mhm.
and going forward, we'll probably have a similar newsletter.
Okay.
And definitely something that I want to continue to include is highlighting other designers. I think that's just a beautiful way for the community to come together and support each other.
Yeah, that,
Um,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then also just like engaging the community with. We were doing weekly questions of just like, what's your favorite XYZ as like an example. So like it could be anything from thematic but related to our game. Like, what's your favorite like ancient city or what's your favorite monument? So that we can take the people who have been so invested in the game and like include their opinions. You know, like we're not going to have the Parthenon as part of the game because it's generally supposed to be a like vague representation of the ancient world, but we'll have cards that are inspired by the people's reflections of what they really like about the ancient world, or mechanically, you know, like what's your favorite instance where this happened in a game, and we'll try and reflect those as well
Mhm.
in our own designs.
Yeah. So how have you like? I know it's fairly early stages, but how have you like done the content creation side? Like you talked about the guest writers,
Mm-hmm.
but have you done like I know you did Diary of the Lincoln Geek. You
Yep.
did a podcast or video cast with them,
Yeah.
but like how else have you interacted with content creators and other publishers and whatnot around the game?
Yeah, so we've got a few people who have offered reviews for us. Diary of Lincoln Geek was one of them. They offered a written review, which was great. There's also Bryce Castle with
Boards
his
and brew,
channel, Brews and
brews and
Boards.
boards or board and brew or something. It's
Yeah.
one of the two.
I know that they're going through a revamp of their channel, but
Mhm.
um, great folks who are also offering us a review. Um, Highly recommend checking out all of their content, especially like their podcasts.
Really
And
good quality, really
yeah,
good quality podcast.
yeah. I've also been on a few other podcasts, including Global Gamers, where I just talked about game design in general. But you know, obviously, as I talk about game design, I'm going to reflect on my own
Yeah.
game. And they also gave me a little bit of a spotlight. Also, Whose Turn Is It Anyway? A great podcast about just a game group that decided to talk about the games they were playing. And
Mhm.
they gave me a highlight of Prestige after they played it on TTS. So yeah, also lined up to be on Kick Saga with Matt. We're supposed to record that next week, which will be exciting. And yeah, just posting as much as we can and trying to get people interested. I really appreciate in the board game hype community the self promo Sundays. That's been a huge, huge boost for us.
Yeah, that was something I really wanted to do, just like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is dumb. You know, you shouldn't do self promotion." I'm just like, I'm a huge believer in self promotion, but like, you just have to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And Sundays are the best days to like. I'm not gonna like delete anything. You know,
Mhm.
you spam post whatever you want on Sunday, but like only Sunday. Like the other
Mhm.
days you can, but you have to make it more meaningful and stuff. Sunday is just like if you got something to share, just share it. And I
Yeah,
wanted to make sure there was a platform for that. Um, but and yeah, of course, Facebook, the algorithm does not like a lot of these things, and so it's a constant adapting. How do I do this without Facebook thinking it's spam? So
right.
hiding everything from everyone. It's like, I'm just trying to do cool things, Facebook. Um, cool. Well, let's jump over to the campaign now.
Sure.
And I think this is probably a good time to announce, to the people here, the situation we're in
Mhm.
and how we're gonna discuss it. We're not gonna get into too much detail around like the nitty gritty details, but I think it's a something that will benefit the community as a whole. So, can you describe what situation we're in now with Prestige going forward?
Sure. So about 2 years ago, I had signed Prestige over to Oak Lounge Games, a great little publisher who has a very particular niche of manufacturing that they work with. And throughout the years, they've been great for helping me develop the game and help me get on my feet. And we were supposed to launch the campaign as of next Friday. But despite our best efforts, it's just not going to work out financially. And it's very sad that it's so close to launch. I think I've compared it to a few people in that like I feel like an astronaut who is sitting in the cockpit and got the call that like weather caused us to scrap the launch.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But just like any shot to the moon, we're gonna get liftoff eventually. But the partnership with Oak Lounge has been um, separated. I'm working with them to get the rights back to continue with other publishing, and I wish them the best as they continue to develop their own publications and continue to develop their business. But for the time being, we are going to postpone the launch, and I'm going to look for other avenues of getting it into people's hands, which is, it's hard, but it'll be an exciting adventure once things start to materialize again.
Yeah, I you said shot to the moon, and I was just like, I
I like
have
it.
the graphic ready already. I didn't expect you to say that, but that worked out perfectly. Yeah, and so one reason I wanted to bring this up, and like, because we had talked about maybe not bringing this up, maybe it's
Mhm.
too tough of a subject, but in my personal opinion, like these things happen, and you're not the first one that this has happened to. Like
Mhm.
1 week before launch, that's a little quick. That's really tough on you too because all this hype, all this
Mhm.
pre-marketing that you were doing ready to launch, and then as soon as something like that happens, it's a brick wall. Like you said, like you're in the cockpit and now you're like, crap, now what do I do? Like we kind of have to go back to the beginning a little bit. But I think you're doing it the right way though, because a few other people I've talked to that have done this before, they just launched anyway. They
Mhm.
were like, okay, I'll launch and then I'll do it myself, or I'll launch and find publishers while I launch. That's the wrong way to do it. So I
Uh-huh.
think you're doing it the right way. You're pausing it. You're recouping everything. And are you going to be self-publishing then, or still looking for publishers? You think?
It's kind of up in the air.
Okay.
Self-publishing is kind of terrifying to me, but it's
Yeah.
definitely something that I've talked to a few people, and it's something that's a possibility. I've never really dove into the idea of wanting to create my own board game company, which I think is the avenue that self-publishing most leans itself towards. Because if
Mhm.
you're just going to publish like a game here and there, it's not necessarily as advantageous. It's not necessarily worth all the effort you put into it. But it's not something that I've completely uh, said no to,
Yeah.
and something that I'm going to heavily consider, especially since the game is so well developed now. But I'm also open to looking at other publishers and seeing what they have to offer as well. Especially since I've done what I can to create a community around the game, but publishers have just so much more leverage in the space to be able to say like, hey, we're making this game and automatically gain some followers through that. So we'll see what the future has, but for now it's kind of a big question mark,
Up
but
in
I see a lot of hope in that question mark.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's too bad, but we're gonna adapt, right? And we're
Yeah.
gonna go forward. So on that note, we're gonna bring it back to positive land here. And what has been like your favorite thing about designing this game? Like, do you have a favorite mechanism in the game? Like, what is your favorite thing about the game entirely?
Okay. I know that you asked favorite, which inherently demands one, but I'm going to give you two.
Hey, that's
Um,
fine.
I have my favorite card in the game, which is the watch signal, and it was just really fun to incorporate this into the game in such a unique way. And it's not like super obvious what it's supposed to be, but it has a very specific inspiration behind it, and that inspiration is from The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. My favorite scene in all of cinema is the lighting of the beacons of Gondor. And
Mm.
you've got that like Mary is up there and he's like, or no, it's Pippin is up there and he's like trying to light the signal while he's conquering his own fear of heights, and he's trying to do it secretly. And it's just like then one by one after he succeeds. Oh, spoilers for this decade-old film.
I don't have a spoiler graphic.
The beacons light and they follow across like this swooping landscape as one after the other lights up, and the hope is like returned, and eventually the Rohirrim see the signal, and they there's a big moment of tension of like, oh no, like will the King of Rohan, which is like super pissed at Gondor, like will he respond? And then he has that like as the music quells, like we ride for Gondor moment, and then you see all the Rohirrim riding off, and like you feel hope again in the midst of this like terrible battle. And so that card basically represents that moment where you're like lighting the beacon and calling for aid, and it just brings in more defense to your city. And it's just
dramatic. It's just like
yeah,
feels powerful.
yeah. And so each card has like thematic inspiration behind it. That's the easiest one that I'd be like, this is what this is from. But each one has that, and watching people interpret these in their own way as well has been really interesting. The second favorite thing that I've had, which is kind of related, is we have our amazing artist Terry, who has done some really beautiful cityscapes. We provided her with just a list of buildings that we wanted her to paint, and she just ran with it. And we got to see her interpret them into these cityscapes that then we have been able to chop up and assign to individual cards. So as you're playing the game, you're playing these cards into a shared tableau, and you're recreating these wonderful cityscapes that are totally a reflection of Terry and her amazing imagination, intermingled and in your own way, which is just a really cool effect of like chopping up these big, beautiful paintings and allowing players to play these cards off of it to create a new image. And
that's so cool. Like, so you had her do individual paintings for each card, or was this like one big painting and you kind of narrowed it down?
It's 7 big paintings, one for each tribe, and then one for the communal set of cards, which are just like your average, like a city wall and a well, things that don't belong thematically to anyone. So each painting has its own color scheme and its own beautiful like architecture style, and they all represent the thematics of each card, and those have all been chopped up into the different decks. So each picture has been chopped up into 30 cards, and then you're reconstructing that intermingled with the other pictures, which are all like very obvious that they're different. Like the warrior cards are like reds and browns, but the fishing tribe is like blues and greens. But they're all still cohesive when you place them next to each other, and it just creates this very diverse looking city, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking for your. I'm
totally
downloading
fun.
some pictures
Yeah.
while you're talking, so it takes. I should have done this beforehand, but it kind of just passed my mind. But yeah, I know that a lot of things that I've seen lately has been like companies are basically commissioning a huge one big painting with multiple scenes, because that's like the least expensive way to do that. Because if you have one big thing and you just tell them I want this scene here, this scene, then you can use those little areas on your cards. So then it's just commissioning one big painting as opposed to 8, 10, 12. It's, and looking at these, I'll put these up here in a second.
Sure.
But looking at these, it's like, oh my gosh, these are amazing.
Yeah, she did a great job with it.
But yeah, so while I download these pictures, can you like the little bit of the marketing side of this? Can you tell us like who your game is for? Like who is your target audience? Like who would like it, who would not like it? Things like that.
Sure. So it's a midweight game. So we developed it as a game that can be um, a great gateway game, but still interesting to people who have been in the hobby for a while. It's definitely not something that leans towards like heavy Euros. So if you're looking for like an all night game fest, this is probably going to be your appetizer game. But it still has enough significance to it that it can be a lightweight game night with just your friends. Um, I think people who are particularly intrigued by ancient history will really love the game because both the artwork is designed to be a way that's inspired by a lot of ancient history. It's not like one particular nation of the ancient world, but it's just inspired by all of it. And the cards themselves represent a similar aspect where it's just like these are things that you could probably find in every ancient civilization, but they're inspired by individual events or factions that you might find in every reflection of humanity. Um, and then also, one of our guest writers is actually has a master's in ancient world celebrations of the Mediterranean. So he's like
Oh wow.
able to develop event cards that really reflect that really well. So I think history buffs will really enjoy this game, but also just lovers of tableau building and lovers of art. Yeah, this is probably my favorite piece. This is for the fishing tribe.
I was just say, I
And
think I got the right art pieces.
yeah, this is great.
Um, yeah, I mean, just looking at the details of some of these, I can't zoom in really, but like
Yeah.
if you look on the Facebook group, so if you guys are interested, go to the Facebook group. We'll plug that later on. But
Mhm.
he has all of these pictures in there, and that's where I'm taking these from. And they just like I'm looking at the style, and I love the oily paint
Yeah.
style that they went for, and it was just like so this is the water tribe then, huh?
Yeah, this is the fishing tribe.
Fishing tribe.
So they're very water heavy, obviously. They like to live in the delta, and they're rather cheaper buildings. So you got like a lot of the like stilt homes and things like that. But you also have some great grandeur to it with like the Great Lighthouse and
I kind of want
the
to put this as
shipyard.
my like website background, like the desktop. It's so
Yeah.
relaxing to look at. And then we have this one here.
Yep.
What's this
And
one?
that's the priestly tribe. So they've got a lot of like spiritual buildings and inspiration. Um, I do apologize. You do have probably the most updated, but this is like a step along, or the most updated in the group. But
Yeah,
there's a newer one which has a little bit more detail added into it. But
yeah. These
it's
aren't
still a
final.
beautiful painting. Yeah. um, and yeah, this group in particular does really well with like building great monuments that
Hmm.
represent their spiritual devotion, but maybe they suffer a little bit more than with like developing coin compared to the merchant tribe, which is all about building markets and trade routes and things like that.
Okay. And then we have a couple more here.
Yeah, that's the warrior tribe. A little bit sparser is the image, which is very intentional because they like staging grounds, but they're not so into building things as they are building themselves up into the greatest warriors. So there's a lot of tents and barracks and things like that.
I
Um,
love uh I love on the very top where you can just see like I'm assuming those are a bunch of people or are those like
yeah,
gardens or something.
yeah, that's there's a series of cards, unit cards in the game that represent different like uh, roles that the different tribes can take. So the warrior tribe has a series that are like the guards, and then
Hmm.
the garrison, and then the legion. So just like the army building up and up and up. So that's what you see up there is just the
Okay.
staging of this massive army.
Awesome. And then we got one more here. Um,
Yeah,
what's going on here?
that's the crafting tribe. So you get a lot more color and pop
Oh
out of
wow.
these because they're the artists of the city. They build the great monuments and they really hone in their skills. Down at the bottom, you can see the underground section. So the cards exist both above ground and under, as well as like on mountaintops and whatnot. But the underground has like ancient ornate tombs and
Hmm.
kilns and things like that. Whereas up above, you have some crafting markets and some specialty shops and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I love when so like as opposed to the first one, the fishing tribe art.
Mhm,
I love how like there's that desaturated look even. It's
mhm.
like you because you say colorful and I'm just like looking at this like colorful, yeah, in a different way.
Yeah.
It's like obviously like this is super colorful in my studio, and I'm looking at that like, man, the color accents in here really help your eye move along the painting.
Yeah.
It's like you don't necessarily need just the and like that dirt section down there, like the
Mhm.
underground. I didn't even think about that until I just saw the different color, the colors of dirt there, and that's super cool. I love how
Yeah.
you've got dimension in there, just with like a flat surface. Really sweet
Mhm.
how you did that. Um,
Yeah, and it
cool.
was really important for us with this one in particular that they're the crafters, so the colors need to represent things that crafters in the ancient world would have available. So it's a lot of clay colors that can
Mm,
really pop against each other, but as you said, are a little bit more desaturated. And the only things that really pop like bright are kind of the gold in the
yeah.
upper left hand corner. There's a jeweler's house. That's what that building is.
Oh,
So that
okay.
really pops to you. But otherwise, it's just like people were making things out of berries for inks and stuff like that. So you don't get the bright pop that you get with board game hype.
Yeah. No, I love that. So cool. Yeah. So we got a little bit of artwork in there. I just have a few more
Yeah,
questions that I'm curious about. So like
great.
me as a marketing guy, I'm always curious about these kind of things. So like what are the lessons like so if other designers are on here watching or if anyone watches this later on YouTube, what kind of lessons have you learned so far in like the pre-marketing and
Mhm.
pre-hype of the process? Like what could you do better? What do you think you haven't done as well? Like give us some context.
Yeah, I think what so our base strategy for this was a lot of grassroots marketing, which was something that we recognized as being a lot for us upfront. It's going to be a lot of work,
Mm,
and I think we did really well with the grassroots. But what we probably could have done better with leading up to the launch that was supposed to happen next week, was the Facebook marketing ads and things like that, which we didn't lean on as heavily because we were really hoping the grassroots would really push us.
yeah.
And it's been great to have people like sign up for the campaign who I met at a local bar because
Oh, that's
people
cool.
who did that are probably more likely to hit like, yeah, I'm going to be a backer than
Yeah, I
somebody who
know that
just ran
person.
across it as an
That was
ad.
so cool.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of success in there, but I think it really needs to be a balance, which we didn't do as well as we would have liked. So moving ahead, I think integrating a more digital marketing and ad spend
Mm,
is going to be crucial to really developing as it leads to its next campaign,
yeah.
whenever that may be. But yeah,
Well,
especially early in a campaign development, I think the biggest part is going to be that grassroots, like play testers, are going to be your core
yeah.
community that will not only help you and then be backers in the end, but will help you find more people who are interested. Because I've had a lot of people who play test my game and then they're like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to this person. They really like games, and I think they love your game." So I've been able to expand like a big tree branching out to all these different communities just through people that I've come in contact with.
Yeah, and I mean that Andrew Lowen of Crowdfunding Nerds said it best. Playtesting is marketing. I mean,
Yeah.
he said that, and I was like, "Yup." Like that is ever since I like started talking to people about how to market organically, because like that's what I'm good at.
Mhm.
And Facebook ads and stuff. I'm not. I mean, I'm sure I could learn it, but I'm not very good at that stuff right now.
Mhm.
But it's like playtest all the time. And playtest your game, yeah, but really build the relationship side of it, like because your game is going to be play tested a million times, right?
Mhm.
But really it's you want to get that interaction, you want to be that person that they remember when they see the campaign. It's like
Mhm.
Prestige, right? Like we play tested this game, and if you're like really into just the personalization of it, if you're really into chatting with them about the game and about themselves and stuff, they're going to be like, oh, Prestige, what's this? Oh, I remember, like he asked me
Yeah.
about my day, or like how my design was, stuff like that. I think that's crucial in like grassroots marketing,
Yeah.
and it's all the tree, it grows
Yeah.
outwards. But cool. So like we're ending up here. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's do some conclusion stuff. um obviously we know right now it's not launching next week, but it will be launching at some point.
Yeah.
For right now, where can people find information about the campaign, things that are happening about the game?
Yeah, the Facebook group is going to probably be the best way forward. I'm pretty active there. Weekly updates, if not more, and as well as the Discord is where I host all of my playtests, and also provide some updates there in different sections. I'm not as good of a Discord user, so that's always been a little bit of a challenge for me. But otherwise, I'm
Discord's
always
tough.
available. Yeah. And then, I'm going to keep posting in Board Game Hype. So stay tuned in that community as a little plug for you as well.
Oh, we're already here on the board game.
Yeah.
But I believe, yeah. So if you guys, I'll leave this up until the end here. That's the QR code directly to the Facebook page. So if you guys were interested in following Prestige, talking in there, Joe will be in there responding to any questions you may have, whatnot. Just go ahead and hit up that QR code. So the final thing, and I know you all waiting for the giveaway. Everyone's here, just like all the 7 people watching are just like waiting for me to say, "Oh, there's a giveaway." um, but yeah, so the last thing is like, what's next for you as a designer? Like, let's say we have this game, right? And it does well, but what's next? Do you have another design in the works? Is there something like you were talking about maybe self-publishing, learning about that stuff? So
Yeah, I have a lot of designs that have been sitting on the back burner for a long time that I'm excited to bring out and experiment with. I actually just brought a new design to, there's a group here called the San Francisco Board Game Design Meetup that meets every month. And I brought a game about playing tag with a ghost in a haunted house. And that was a lot
I
of
love
fun.
that. That's great.
I also have a game about procrastination that I have been putting off working on for a while. And
That's kind of ironic that you
yeah,
would.
yeah. And then, Prestige, I'm going to continue to develop and see how to get that published one way or the other. And then if it does successfully, I've got a lot of ideas for expansions that I hope to bring out, mostly those other tribes that have been pushed to the wayside, as well as some new mechanics and things that I can introduce in different expansions.
Yeah, that's always super exciting. I always when I had Jack on the last time, he was like, "You heard it here first," and he just like unleashed that he was doing other stuff, and everyone was like, "What?" And that's such a cool feeling. So I like to ask that question. You're like, "You got something else in the works?" As designers, we always have things in the background. Like there's a million ideas, and like Gabe always says, ideas are worthless until you can get them, to fruition. And so there's a million ideas, but we just got to hustle. We got to make sure those ideas go forward and whatnot. But I think that's going to conclude it. Is there anything else you want to say about the game or just anything else?
No, just keep your eyes open and your ears tuned, because I'll have some updates probably in the next few months, if not sooner, about how to move forward with it. So I appreciate everyone's interest and look forward to what we can do with it.
Will you be at Gen Con this year?
I won't. It's a bummer, but also a good excuse because I have a family wedding to attend.
Okay, well, yeah, you probably should do that instead. Cool. Well, we're gonna do, before we head off here, we have the last 5 minutes. For those 7 of you here, also we have someone that scanned the QR code. Appreciate that. That's awesome. For you 8 people that are watching, yes, I am doing a giveaway. Every single one of these streams, I will always have a giveaway at the end. I changed it up a little bit with this one because of some things. And so we're actually going to be giving away 1 copy of Taco with the, I believe these are the promo cards, the promo pack. So I think it's Amin Anderson. Is it Amin or Amin Anderson? He's also a Hyber, and he sent this copy to me to give away to you, amazing people. So if you want to enter the contest, at the end of this stream, I will look through everyone that has said the words. I need you to type in TACO, TACO, in the comments right now below. Get it? See what I did? TACO. Write them in below. And if you do that, I will pick one of you at random to get the game. Shipping is not included, so keep that in mind when you write taco. But yeah, man, I'm excited. This is such a fun thing to do. I can't wait to get more people onto these streams and just talk more about game design. And we'll have you on again with a different topic. I always want to have one topic that's the game focused and one topic that's entirely separate.
Sure.
You know, like we could talk about city building specifically and like a future thing. So yeah, thanks for joining everybody. We're gonna sign off. Reminder: if you want the giveaway, write taco below. And Joe, thanks for hopping on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We'll see you guys later.